Good morning and welcome to Waddy Christian Church. So glad to have you here this morning. We'll skip the singing for that. But know that we're thinking of you. Alrighty, well let us go to God in prayer. I'll leave us some time to pray silently and then I'll close us in a community prayer. Let us pray. Holy Spirit, we invite you into this place and into our hearts anew this day. We ask that you be with us as we gather together, as we hear your words, as we learn our stories. In your holy name, O God, we pray. Amen. Okay. We're still making our way through Jacob's story here. And we're going to be in chapter 37 of Genesis. So we're kind of moving right along. This is kind of a long story, but it's a cool story. So I'm going to share the whole thing with you so that you can kind of hear it now. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers and sons of Bilhah and sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, that he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel, who was Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he could not stop himself from sharing. He told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told this to his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down on the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, and his father kept the matter in mind. Now, his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel, who's still Jacob, just so you know, said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to them, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are?" "They have moved on from here," the man said. "Let's go to Dothan." So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan, but they saw him at a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. This is a great family story, right? "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that our ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," Reuben said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern fine here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to their father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, that richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it, so I guess that was a better thing. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices and balm and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him in to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And so the brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up from out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned and the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" And they told him that they got Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. They took the ornamented robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "in mourning will I go down to the grave to my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Like I said, it's a long story, but it's kind of a cool story. It kind of gets us where we're going. I wonder if you've ever looked up your family history. There are lots of ways in which you can do that. And for a long time, what you could do is you could ask your mom, you could ask your dad, you could ask your grandma, your great-grandma, your aunts, your uncles. They kept all those records and they could share with you those stories. Now we've kind of gotten past those generations. So now we have wonderful technology to step in. We can swab our cheeks and send off a DNA, and all of a sudden Ancestry.com will tell us what areas and regions we come from, generation before generation before generation. We have those conversations about looking up our heritage to know better where we came from. And in some places and instances so that we can stay away from going back there, right? But for our faith story, there's no swabbing that we can do. There's no sending off to some kind of computer network. There's no expensive program for us. Instead, we simply open the scriptures and see the story of our generations before us. Here we are, still in the midst of the Old Testament, working our way through a family story. It's a story not just of any family, but it's a family of faith, of Israel, and how we got here from there. And because it is a true story, which we don't like to admit sometimes, it's also a story about your family, because it's a story of promise and of dreams, and we get excited about that part, but it's also a story of conflict and violence. Most of what we know about love, we learn from our family. And most of the damage that we share also, we learned from family. How can I hope to tell this story in some kind of frame of mind? It wouldn't have been a very eventful story, just a story about an old man with 12 sons, and had it not been for the appearance in the story of Jacob's next to last son, Joseph. Joseph's name means add, addition, add-on. And a good name it is for Joseph, too, because Joseph is late in his father's life, late in his brother's lives, added on, an addition to, which changes everything. Do you know what it's like to be the center of mom and dad's world, and then all of a sudden something get added into it? Your mother remarries after her divorce, or your parents come home from the doctor saying, "By the way, you're going to be a big brother or a big sister." Guess what? It causes problems. We don't like it. Now Jacob, who has wrestled with God and become Israel at this point, bought most of his family clothes at what we'll say Walmart, right? It's cheap, it's efficient, it's the smart thing to do when you have 12 sons. You don't even know how many daughters, that's how patriarchally the society is, but we know they existed also. But with 12 sons, it makes sense to go to a place like Walmart and get all the things that they need. But he refused to do that for Joseph. No, you can't have that low-end mass production stuff for a favorite. No, you go to designer shops and boutiques because only the best for the precious little Joseph. There he picked out Joseph, according to the King James Version, a coat of many colors. Now, you've seen the musical, you know the story, you learned it in Sunday school about this coat of many colors and the joy things it is. So I hate a little bit to share. that it was not, in fact, what you have been told. It is not a coat of many colors. It is a long robe with sleeves. That's really the end of it. It's a long robe with sleeves. A garment fit for a prince, but not necessarily a coat, not necessarily vibrant colors. It is what it is. It's not only a fine present from a doting father, because it says that Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other children. It is not only a sign of a father's favoritism, which you have a child when you're over 70, you probably are going to think it's your favorite, right? You're going to be pretty proud of that fact. No, the long sleeve robe was also a sign that Joseph was set apart from his brother. He was different than his brothers. Every time he put that robe on, it was a sign that little Joseph was better than they were. So, and you wonder why that may be? Like what it was about this robe that made him better than they? Okay, well let's get into it, why not, right? So little Joseph could wear long sleeves because he did not work in the field. If you worked in the field, what did you wear? Short sleeves. Because you literally rolled up your sleeves in order to go to work. That's where that expression came from. So therefore, he wore his long sleeves, and the only job that he ever was reported to doing was to run with those long sleeves flapping in the wind back to tattletale on his older brothers. He would go and say, "Are you doing what you're supposed to do?" "Nope." So then he'd run back to Dad. "Oh, Dad, guess what? They're not doing what they're supposed to do." So can you really blame his older siblings for really being frustrated with him, for hating him, for the things that he got and the things that he was able to do? Do we know what it's like to be sweating out in the fields and look up and here comes this long sleeve little Joseph, little Mr. Added On? You know, as the average American struggle more and more to pay for the basic needs, while those from other countries and immigration begin to thrive financially, sometimes we understand what it's like to be the big sister or the big brother in this story, too. And in places around the world who used to put signs up that say, "We speak English," in order to attract the wealthy tourists, now use other languages to do the same thing. Did no one here feel just a little tinge of resentment as our older brother or little brother resentment that our sons and our daughters were going without some basic needs while our prosperous economy sent checks to other countries instead of for our children's education and care? We wake up at the end or possibly the beginning of a pandemic and we see little brother Joseph in his Mercedes and his Lexus in his long sleeves, and we hate him for it. We're angry with him for it. That long robe with full sleeves caught up in itself, and all of his brothers hated what Joseph and all the pathology of the family that isn't working. A father who doesn't know how to love one without damaging others. And the natural resentment of older siblings for young, favored upstart begins. It's a long robe and a long road. Don't you just hate people in long sleeve robes who lord it over everybody else? Those of you who don't have robes and you're sitting in the pews, don't you just hate it? Next Sunday we're going to have a baptism, and on special Sundays, whether it's, maybe sometimes in weddings, sometimes for funerals, sometimes for special Sundays, I break out the preacher robe. I don't wear it very often, maybe twice a year at most. It's beautiful. It cost a fortune. I love the beauty of this robe. I belong to a small percentage of people on this planet who have a college education, and an even smaller percentage of folks that do not have to sweat to make ends meet. My only job is to write a short speech every week, or to do perhaps a few other small tasks. I know what it's like to wear a long robe with full sleeves. Mine fits quite well. Oh, but now, unlike Joseph, my robe is not a sign of paternal favoritism. No, I worked for that long robe. I spent time in musty libraries and fighting ridiculous psychological demons to get it. I gave up on friendships and desires to get it. I gave up my home and my family to get it. But it is not handed to me by my parents. It is not gifted to me out of love. they do. But there is always that older brother, that older sister, that other friend who growl under their breath. She got opportunities we didn't have because Daddy gave them to her. And there they are, back behind in the deadbeat town, the no-joy job and the zero options for advancements. They love to remind me of what's been handed to me. And all those teachers who struggled, the one who stayed after class to help me when all the other students had left, the coach who gave me the second chance when I completely blew the first one, to the parents who began saving and planning for me to have opportunities that they never even dreamed possible. I suppose folks aren't that far off when they say Daddy gave me my robe. I suspect that everybody here has a long robe, really. A sign of special gifts, parental favor, divine. And how does your robe fit? When's the last time you thought about it or looked at it? No, I don't wear mine as much as I should. And it reminds me of that. I can't tell you that Joseph wore his robe too well, though. One day, Joseph came down late as usual for breakfast. His brothers are already dressed. They're slurping their cornflakes, ready to go to their fields in their short sleeves. And he begins to tell them of his great dreams, how he is better than they, and they are going to bow down and worship him one day. Yeah, he's winning all kinds of points. Great. Really? They ask. And he tells them all about the new things. And the story says that his 11 brothers, if they despised Joseph because of that robe, they now hated him even more because of his dreams. It was too much for even his father. Really, Joseph? You really have to go that far? Come on. Are your mother and I going to bow down to you? Don't be silly. When Daddy sent Joseph to the fields to check on his brothers, they said to one another, you know what? I can't take it anymore. Let's just kill him. Let's just be done with him. Let's see what he thinks and what his dreams become. You know the verse. It's the one that's subscribed on the tomb of Martin Luther King. Away with this dreamer. But they thought better of it. You gotta give them credit for that, right? Instead, they throw him into an empty cistern and they decide to sell him into slavery. Is that better? It turns out better if we know the full story. And what do? The long sleeve robe, this thing that sets him apart from everybody else. They smear it with blood, they take it home, they lay it before their father, and they say, guess what happened at work today? And the story ends in pain. Jacob wailing into heaven, grieving over his supposedly dead and beloved favorite son. Now they tried to comfort him, but it's to no avail. Jacob said he would go to hell weeping for Joseph, the pain that those brothers' lies inflicted on their father. Thus, the first chapter of the story of Joseph ends with his brothers dumbly watching their father grieve in torment, and Joseph on his way to slavery in Egypt. Things may yet somehow turn out for this family, in case you've seen the story before, saw the musical. But in the moment, this is a troubled family. We don't know the fullness of the story yet. All we have for now is deceit, resentment, violence, slavery, and grief. Oh my! Jacob's family, Israel's family, and the people who came after this family certainly had their share of grief. In sermons of Christendom, the curses of Martin Luther, and the medieval persecutions, and the ashes of Auschwitz, Israel would have many occasions to cry out to heaven for their dead children. It is a story about a dream that is added on to the normal, humdrum course of an ordinary family's life. Things might have gone quite uneventfully if it had not been for an added nuisance of a little brother and his arrogant, pushy, Martin Luther King style, I have a dream. It is a story about resentment felt by those who do not dream, who seethe with burning envy as pushy, upstart little brother, gifted in ways we do not yet understand, begins to assert his dreams over us. So, it's a story about killers of dreams also. About people who can't stand to make room for the pushy little brothers and their dreams. I told you, it's a story about a family, our family. In this family, mine and yours, the human family, we play many roles. Some of you are here because somebody gave you a nice, long-sleeved, beautiful robe. You're gifted. Others of you are here by virtue of dreams. Your pushy, fantastic, sometimes exasperating to others dreams. And some of us are like those brothers, deniers of dreams, maybe even capable of killing those to whom have been gifted the dreams, greater than our own. And some of us are Joseph, full of dreams but waiting, stuck in Egypt, impatient for the next chapter to unfold. We are left to wonder, how will all of this work out? Who will work it all out for us? Amid such family violence and deceit and grief, who will work it out? And we pray, all of us in Israel's family in our various roles, that the one who is never mentioned in the story, I talked about that last week, it's still true this week, but whose presence is there, darting from tree to tree, waiting in the weeds, we pray that he might have some plan in mind for us behind the initial sad events of this family story. We pray, therefore, that Paul was right when he said that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, who are called according to God's purposes. But we also wonder if the pain of our childhoods and the struggles of our adult lives will ever turn heartache into joy. Will our hate ever be turned to love? Will our short sleeves ever become long sleeves? Will our dreams ever become a reality? I don't know if you're a country music fan at all, or southern rock, whatever you want to call it, but Hank Jr. has a great song, Family Tradition. A lot of bands end with that tradition, right? Family Tradition talks about, why does he do all these things that's harmful to him? Why does he get drunk? Why does he get stoned? Why does he sleep with all these people? Why does he do all these things that ultimately bring him down? And he says, oh, I'm just following the family tradition. How many things do we also do because we are following family tradition? With that logic, hearing the story of Israel, we too should keep making horrible decisions and choosing to live a life with no color, no joy, while claiming, hey, I'm just doing what I've been taught to do. This is an old family tradition. Or, and just hear me out here, or we could see the love of Christ waiting for us. And we could accept the colorful coat of love he has to offer. Seems like a much easier decision to me, but it's something you have to make for yourself.